Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 9 of Teamfight Talkshow. I am DoA. With me is Frodan. And today, our very special guest, Salvyyy, is joining us. There is an incredible amount of stuff to talk about today. We just had a huge new patch hit this morning. There's a bunch of fun tournaments starting up this week and next week, and a lot of cool stuff to look forward to later in the month. So we've got a lot to get through. But first of all, let's see how everybody's doing. Frodan, how's it going, man?
I'm doing well. Just took a little bit of time to finally see my family after like 9 months. Checking with them. I didn't get a lot of time to play on 10.13, but apparently I didn't really miss very much because it was a lot of the same thing with Cybers, Jinx, and Sorks. And today is a new patch, so I'm excited to talk about it and talk to Salvyyy.
Yeah, same here actually. With the I didn't play a whole lot. I took a week or two off kind of from things, but we're back in action again. And we'll see how this new meta shakes up. So before we get into that, though, Salvyyy, welcome to the show. For those of you, for people out there that aren't familiar with you, you have been stomping all over the European ladder for a long time now. What else can you tell us about yourself? Give your introduction to the community for those who may not be familiar with you.
Yes, I'm known as Salvyyy. I started playing TFT in the middle of Set 1. Got rank 1 and 2 at season end and started streaming them and pretty much, continued to always be on top of the EU ladder since then.
All right, cool. So do you have any other like esports background before TFT? Did you play anything else competitively before this, or is this kind of your first foray into esports?
I wouldn't say competitively. I played CSGO and League of Legends at a somewhat high level, but nowhere near like where I'm on TFT. Like, I was global lead in CSGO, and I was high diamond when it mattered in League, but nothing like this, no.
All right, so how are you liking it? How are you enjoying the esports life so far, such as it is?
To be honest, it's great. Like, I just started playing TFT for fun, right? Pretty much like everyone, and enjoyed the game, played more and more. Then at some point I hit Challenger and realized, I'm actually not that bad at the game, and since then I'm just trying to get better and better.
Cool. All right. Well, let's move on to today's news, and we've got a lot to talk about with that. As I said, we've got a lot to talk about with everything today, pretty much. I suppose one of the big things coming up is the Giant Slayer Series European Cup is coming up. It's starting next week. Salvyyy, I believe you're the captain for Team Germany, right?
No, actually I'm not. It's
oh, you're not? All right, sorry.
I'm just a recruit, yeah.
You'd be my captain. No, don't worry.
I appreciate that.
But it's kind of an interesting format too, because we're kind of breaking things up into nations this time, and hopefully in the future there'll be a lot more nations involved. It's kind of a test run of the concept. Frodan, I'll throw this one over to you first. Like, what do you think about this format where it's going to almost be sort of like it is kind of a team competition rather than an individual player competition this time?
Yeah, I think that one of the more interesting things about TFT is like how can we incorporate team dynamics of it. I know that, for example, like Hearthstone Battlegrounds does that in a lot of their tournaments, and it's been very popular amongst that. And I think that TFT is becoming like a little bit more and more antisocial with each passing like month, where like people grind on their own. Like, you can't really do a queue with like people who are Masters Plus now. And so I think that introducing more ways to make it fun and dynamic for people is better. So I'm a big fan of team tournaments. I personally believe that it's a really good way to increase the sample size without and minimize variance without actually having to just play more games. Because if you ask every player, they want to play like 12 rounds in a day to really determine they're good, but you don't have time for that. Viewers don't want to watch all 12 games. But if you have teams, you kind of have more people providing inputs for your success. And therefore, I do believe that it's a really interesting and a fun way to decrease that variance while still making it really compelling.
So I think the big thing that jumps out to me is in terms of how this will be different from your regular TFT tournament is that if you have people from the same team, the same national team in the same lobby, there's an opportunity for one of those players to kind of just like grief their opponents and take away things that they know their opponents need. And so the big question is, will that be worth it? And I'm going to ask you to answer this question, Salvyyy. Like, do you think that strategy is actually going to be worth it to have one player perhaps sacrificing some of their score to hurt other players in the lobby while elevating their teammate? Do you think that's feasible?
Yeah, I actually talked about that today. If you have a really, really bad game and you're like only playing for maybe top 7, top 6 because you lowered so hard, it might actually be worth it to roll down for someone else's unit just to take them out of the pool. I think that's totally viable if you have a really bad opener. Especially for the finals, if it's 4 versus 4, like one player, you can sacrifice one player to like grief 2 or 3 of the different teams. That seems worth it.
It's a good point. Like, do you feel like you mentioned that could be something to do if you had kind of a slow start. Are you saying that you would think that's probably the only time you'd want to do that? Or can you just start a game potentially saying, all right, player X, you this game are going to just basically int and hurt everybody on the other side?
I don't think you would designate a player to do that, but if I recall, like, look at the mech meta, for example, where there was like mech was so strong, but as soon as it's 2 players mech, somehow it gets so much worse. If it's a meta like that, that's not as flexible, and the comp that relies on 3-starring units, it actually becomes like a valid strategy for sure. And if it's like a flexible meta, it probably becomes worse and worse.
Makes sense. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I think that we've tried these kind of tournaments in Twitch Rivals in the past where, like, is it theoretically better to have like teams where one person's like focused on griefing other teams? And it just wasn't really a successful strategy despite people trying that. And as much as TFT and Knowledge Chess has a lot of differences, that core principle still stays the same. So, like, realistically, what you might see is players who, you know, might be splitting up the comps that they try to play, or just like basically giving each other advice. And if they like understand that there's a chance they're going to play against each other, they try to, like, you know, play a weaker board. That kind of fun stuff is more fun than just like, oh, you know, I'm going to grab every Syndra known on the planet so that no one else can, you know, grab and play sorcerers. That strategy hasn't worked. Anyway. You know, maybe there is an opportunity for that strategy to work. I'm not sure.
All right. Well, it's going to be interesting. That's going to start next week, of course. For those of you wondering when you're going to be able to watch it, it's going to be next Monday. That's going to be awesome. Dan and I are going to be casting it, so no bias, of course. But you know, it's going to be great. You're going to want to see it. Speaking of other news, one thing we wanted to chat a little bit about today as we move on is the world's qualifying formats and kind of the NA versus EU. And you know, how we kind of feel about that dynamic, because NA essentially, as I gather, and I'm not like a big format expert or anything like that, but as I gather, it seems like EU is a lot of ladder into tournament qualifier, whereas NA is essentially a lot of tournaments into tournament qualifier in the end. Which format do you kind of prefer, Salvyyy, if you could pick between the two?
I think NA format is a bit better because they also have ladder qualification. It's pretty similar to what we have in EU. Sure. But on top of that, they have like the tournament system where we have a few small tournaments where you can also earn a qualifier spot. So I feel like it's just what we have in EU, but as I said, addition to it. So it feels a better fit for certain players that prefer tournament play over ladder.
Yeah, it's because in
EU there's a few people that just don't like grinding ladder, and they would prefer just trying to qualify by tournament play. And I feel like it's fair for them to have a shot.
All right, yeah. As NA, we've got the Team Liquid one, we've got the C9 one that starts today. But that's an interesting kind of thought, is that certain players may prefer to just kind of be at home grinding the ladder and get their qualification that way. Other players can, you know, do better in tournaments, do worse on ladder. So it kind of, having a balance, I suppose, is kind of important, because you are going to see players that have greater strengths in different areas, huh?
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think NA is doing a good job. I felt like EU was just behind on time because the ladder snapshots started basically halfway through, and yeah, it just felt rushed on EU, but it's what we got, so gotta make it work.
All right. What do you think, Dan? Any ideas on the tournament format? Where do you think the ladder should fit in terms of weight towards getting towards the world's qualifiers?
I think it's supposed to be really important. I would say that ladder should represent at least the majority of the qualification spots, because you do want to reward players who are engaged. What you don't want is something that we did in Hearthstone, like at the beginning, which was like half invites, half qualified players, because in the nature of like a game of variance, people who are invited don't have, like, they just get such a leg up, and their probability to qualify goes way up when they have to play such few amount of rounds. At the same time, you can't have entirely like ladder-based qualifications either, because if you do, then there's no real big aspiration path to pro. There's a lot of players that want to compete, similar to like poker, for example, that don't have an opportunity to grind all the time because they play TFT part-time and maybe they hit masters, but the grind to maintain top challenger is so high of a commitment. So I would say that this kind of like multifaceted approach is pretty useful. And like for the first year or two, I think it's totally okay to like crush onto people like Skara and Becca and other people who may not necessarily qualify through a ladder snapshot because they're very skilled players in their own right, but they do a lot to contribute to the growth of the game. So I think that it's really important that there's like a balance and approachability, as opposed to saying you have to have played, hundreds of hours per month in order to qualify for the World Championship. I think that might be a little bit too big of an ask at the start of TFT Championship qualifier.
So Salvyyy, like you are a person who has grinded out, holding both 1 and 2 spots on your ladder. Like, what's that like? What does that commitment take?
It takes a lot of time actually, because I usually do it at season end, because that's the point for me at least that matters the most. When I do it, it's pretty much TFT all day. Then, like if I'm not playing, I'm usually watching streams or theory crafting actually. And mid-season, I actually tame it down a bit, take some days off, don't think about TFT, but yeah.
Which is always good too. It is always important. I think everybody knows in esports and in life to just take a break sometimes and let your mind kind of decompress. Because if you kind of keep forcing yourself to grind, your production, the quality of your games is actually going to go down the more you play at that point.
Yeah, for sure. Like that's also why I don't even play on my main account anymore on stream, because I get distracted. Also, if I spam games, I just get worse and worse. If I'm playing off stream, I'm trying to climb. I usually just play one game, take a small break, and then if I feel, play again. Because I feel like playing back-to-back games actually distracts you so much, and you can't even distract which game you're playing anymore.
Right.
So I feel like taking a mental short break, even if it's just 5 minutes standing up, walking around, and then just playing again actually helps.
Super important. Let's move on to the last tournament that we're going to talk about. At the end of the month, there's going to be the Mortdog Top 4 Madness tournament happening. I'm going to be casting that with Mortdog. It's going to be crazy. The format is insane, but I'm so happy we're doing it because it's going to be fun to see how players kind of approach it. And it's just going to be, fun to see the players kind of play in that context. And so the big thing with this is that the point system in the game is very, very different from what we've seen so far in TFT tournaments, where there's like a little bit more for first, a little bit more for top 4, but overall, you have a lot of chances to, catch up and things like that. This tournament, though, is brutal. It's 11 points for first, 10 points for second through fourth, 0 points for 4 through 7, and then -1 points for 8th. So you lose points even from taking that final spot. So it's a really interesting format, and I just want to get your impressions on it. I'll ask Frodan first, because you and I have been part of a lot of different talks with different organizations about tournament formats and point systems. We helped kind of craft a lot of that. So what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think that it's really unique. I think that we're not anywhere close to figuring out what like the ideal tournament format is in a game like TFT. I think in general, for this entire broad genre of free-for-all esports, like if you just kind of even think about Battle Royale, like in Fortnite or Apex Legends, like these other games, like no one really knows how to make free-for-all games like fun and compelling, both for the player and viewer, that makes it feel satisfying. So we're experimenting a ton. We're talking about like the final win and in, right? In order to win a tournament, you have to win the lobby. That's like an interesting concept. Moore's trying to say fourth is almost as good as first, so we'll see how that works out.
Win's a win, I guess.
Yeah, and I like that because I think it's very reflective of how Riot's even approached this subject, right? Like for example, they're just like tweaking constantly with the set design and trying out a lot of different things. Was Urgot a mistake? We still kind of don't know. I mean, a lot of people probably say yes immediately, but they're really trying to tweak certain things and try radical ideas. So I like that. And then Moore also puts his money where his mouth is, right? He talks about like how much he loves the competitive scene. He talks to top players all the time, and he's even kind of funding the prize pool. So honestly, quite a special person in the industry, like from a multitude of facets. And I really respect Moore for putting on this kind of program, and I really hope that it's a huge success.
I've seen a lot of public-facing developers in the past, but I don't know if I've ever seen one that's quite so frank with the community, and so like transparent about the process and his own personal thoughts about the process and the relationship with that and the fans and all that. It's very cool to see. You open yourself up to a lot of stress by doing that, and so I feel for him in that case. But he seems to be handling it pretty well so far, and it is great to have him in the community. Salvyyy, I'm going to ask, what's your impression as a player who would be playing in a tournament like this? What do you think?
I mean, it would completely change up my approach to the game, right? Because usually when you're playing tournament or ladder, like you just aim for the best placement you can get every game, right? You're playing for every placement point.
Yeah.
So like best average placement, and everyone is getting thrown out of the window completely because you just want top 4, right? It doesn't matter. It's never worth it to risk it for top 1. So if you're approaching the game, that would actually change up the roll timings, probably also the comps you're going for. And stuff. You wouldn't be as greedy, and if every player is doing that in turn means like units getting taken out of the pool earlier. So it's actually changing the game completely. So it's really, really hard to like grasp how much it would change. But as you said, who knows what's the best form? It might be fun, right? So
yeah,
I'm looking forward to it for sure.
I'm going to ask you a question that's very difficult to answer, but I'm curious to see what you'd say anyway. So will this point system produce more skillful games or less skillful games?
Well, that's actually a good question.
I know it's a really hard question to answer because I there's a lot of different factors that go into this. Like you mentioned, you're playing more carefully. Does that mean you're better, or are the risks sometimes better quality play if you are taking them at the right time? So it's a hard question, but just your gut reaction, more skilled or less skilled?
I would say if you do it once, it's probably more skillful because you're not used to it. You need to adapt to the format, right? And you actually have to change up the playstyle completely. So in that sense, when you only do it once, it's definitely more skillful. If you do it every time this format, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that would make it better or not.
Okay.
I would say. Yeah, go ahead, Frodan.
I was just going to say that I feel like maybe TFT might be a game where it can excel with multiple formats. Like the idea is that maybe like day one of competition could be like a traditional point structure. Then another day or maybe another tournament series could just be top 4. And I think that's what makes TFT potentially even better as a competitive game because just like in card games, there's different formats that challenge different skill sets. I think this is interesting. So, maybe a little bit of team, a little bit of top 4 action, maybe a little bit of traditional point structure with win and in. And I think that all of that makes it a better game.
I think it changes the composition pool a little bit as well, in that if you're only getting for top 4, there's going to be some comps that just aren't really going to be feasible anymore, to where, it's like, oh, well, I mean, maybe I can hit top 4 of this, but I guess a 5th or 6th, given my start, is probably okay, that kind of situation. So it almost sort of narrows the viability of different compositions too. So yeah, I'd love to see it. I think this is going to be the best month for TFT esports yet, in my opinion, because we've got a lot of competition. We've got a lot of different formats in competition. And so we're just going to, I think, be able to learn a lot about what makes a good TFT composition this month and build on that to just have better TFT esports down the road. Should be really, really cool. But speaking of things that are really, really cool, we had a patch come this morning. It's very big. It's 10.14, I believe, is the number for it. And man, there are some massive changes here. We've got about 30 minutes to talk about this, which is nowhere near enough time, but we're going to try to fit as much of it in as we possibly can. But I think the big thing that we can start off with here that everybody's talking about right now is the return of Syndra and Star Guardians in general, not necessarily the synergy, the Star Guardian synergy itself, because that got nerfed, quote unquote, but there was so much strength put into the individual heroes, especially Syndra, that let's talk about Syndra right now. There's been discussion about possibly hot fixing. We don't know if that's going to happen or not. I played a couple games with her last night. She seems insanely strong, which I love, I will freely admit. But I want to hear you guys' takes on it. Where do you think of the state of Syndra 24 hours into this? We'll start with you, Salvyyy.
24 hours in, I would probably say she might get hotfix. Yeah, it seems a bit too much the mana buff. Also, Syndra 1 seems too strong. Maybe also a way of fixing her is just lowering Syndra 1 damage. Because usually, if you get a blue buff and you get Syndra 1, you're actually set. You just need some frontline, and she's gonna do the job. So maybe that's also an approach, because she falls off late game. She's really strong stage 3 and 4, and the later it gets into the game, she actually falls off and she's not really the carry anymore.
You have to get like a 3-star Syndra at that point. Otherwise, she just...
Yeah, what you can usually do is you get a Syndra, you push 9, and then you play for Jenna 2, Zera 2, and those are then the main carries. Yeah. But Syndra alone is not going to win you a game, no.
So the big buff here is that her mana went down to 40 mana, which with the blue buff included makes her pretty much a machine gun at this point. She casts extremely quickly, and if you combine that with the fact that she doesn't waste any damage orbs anymore, if she kills someone, the rest of the orbs go to another target. You're just getting insane damage efficiency with it too. I've had a lot of rounds with the new Syndra where I've killed 2 champions on the other side with 1 ult, which is really fun to watch, but maybe a little bit too strong in certain cases. What do you think, Dan? I know you haven't had a lot of time. None of us have really had a lot of time to play this yet, but what are your initial impressions of Syndra here?
I think that Syndra is too powerful relative to what you have to do to commit to her. It seems like a 2-star Syndra is good enough to kind of carry. It's kind of the same thing as what like Vayne was doing, which is like this is 3-star carry that gets you all the way to stage 5 at relatively healthy life total, and then you can kind of choose whatever you want to do. You don't even have to play Star Guardians. You don't even have to play Sorcerers. We've been seeing like Celestial Protector kind of be a front line with like 2 to 4 Sorks. Obviously, Mech is still a thing. I've seen people just play like the Some Sins approach, which just like have 2 of everything and 2 Sorcerers, Splash and Syndra, and she's still killing everything because you have enough frontline and CC with Mystics and whatnot, which seems to be increasingly more important. And also, what seems to become like somewhat of a degenerate thing is that it seems like putting another Syndra is better than completing another synergy. So like there's been boards where I saw people playing 3 Syndras instead of 6 Sorcerers. They play 4 Sorcerers and 2 extra Syndras as opposed to just playing 6 Sorcerers, which feels super counterintuitive and also kind of shows that perhaps this champion is overtuned at the moment. I mean, obviously, people can look at different synergies right now. I think Dark Stars is also skyrocketing in popularity in terms of its power level. But in terms of just the sheer individual power unit, it's not even necessarily Sorcerers or Star Guardians too strong. It might just be Syndra right now.
Well, I think if you include Nico in the conversation as well, she just got some buffs. Her stun at 3 stars. I think it might have already been 2.5 seconds, but she got a little bit tankier as well. And so that makes her just a better frontliner than she was before. The Protector Tier 1, like 2 Protector buff of 30% now for the starting shields makes getting the Protector spat really worth it, more than it was before in traditional Star Guardian Sorks. So it just seems like it's even easier now to get back to that old SG Sork lineup that we all loved or loved to hate back in like 10.6, 10.7, 10.7 is kind of where that peaked, I think. And it seems like it's kind of back right now between all that, even despite the fact that both Sorcerers and Star Guardians were numerically nerfed this patch.
Yeah, it's just the units that got buffed too hard, mainly Syndra. As Frodan said, there's so many comps right now around Syndra that I'm not even sure which is the best variation. It might not even be 6 Star Guardian, because the 6 Star Guardian trade itself is actually pretty underwhelming. You only run 6 Star Guardian because all the units got buffed pretty much. So as Frodan said, you can build like a tanky combo, go like Celestial Protector, Mystic, and 2 Sork, and you just put Syndra there, and she's gonna kill the units over time, right? Because she just ramps up. So yeah, if there's like one unit or one problem right now, it might be Syndra, but yeah, Darkstars and Shaco also look really strong right now.
So let's jump over to Protectors actually from the Syndra conversation. Jarvan got some big buffs, but just Protector Celestial in general seems to be kind of back. I've been seeing it in a lot of lobbies. It seems very strong. It seems like people are trying to go for the 3 stars again. Have you guys been seeing a lot of Protectors in the games that you've either watched or played?
Yeah, I think the most played unit is probably Jarvan right now. Everyone buys Jarvan early right now. A lot of people hyper rolling for it.
He's scary now.
Yeah, you see Shredder come back. There's this reroll combo where you play Caitlyn, TF, Zoe. And then even 2-star Jarvan can carry your mid game if you put items on him and you get Protector online. So yeah, I think they also probably jumped the needle a bit too much on J4 here.
He got some pretty massive buffs, and like you mentioned, when you combine that with the Xayah buff going back up to 0.9 for her attack speed, suddenly Shredder's back. I've seen a Shredder player in every single lobby, and it doesn't seem terrible like it did in the last patch or two. And I don't know. So here's a question. A lot of people were not thrilled with the 1-star carry meta that we had right before the 3.5 changes came in. But does this version of it, if Shredder is back, is this a more acceptable version of having 1-star units able to carry, do you think?
I think it's fine. I think the problem when we had the 1-star meta was actually different things. It was they buffed all 1-cost units at 3-star, most of them. Then we had 2 galaxies, Trade Sector and Treasure Trove, which we still have, that enabled hyper rolling because you got more rolls or more gold.
Yeah.
And then also the percentages were super high on level 4, right? Which also made hyper rolling really efficient. So yeah, since they nerfed them a bit and they nerfed the percentages, I think it's fine to have some comms that are viable if you get the opener for it. For example, Shredder, if you get a lot of J-Force and Zayas and have the items. So it should be a viable comm and a viable strategy to go for one cost 3 stars to win you the game. I think that's totally fine. But if you run into a meta where that's like the only play and you have like 6 people in the lobby doing it, and it gets even more efficient that way because they take out units from the pool, I think then it becomes a problem for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the important thing to focus on is that 3 stars should be like a mini objective that people feel excited about. I know that there's a lot of people that believe that, you know, a really great way to play and balance the game competitively is like make 2-star boards and being flexible really important. But for a lot of players that just even approach the genre in general, 3-starring stuff is a really exciting moment. And for entire few patches, it was like too strong when like, you know, Zai was too good, or like the Candyland builds that were really dominant for like half a patch. Those are like not rewarding and satisfying because the diminishing returns every time you hit that and you hit that comp drops off significantly. You don't even feel satisfied anymore hyper rolling by the time you're playing the comp like the 10th time. But the option to do something like that is important. So, you know, the fact that like for a while it really didn't like, I've seen so many people who try to go for 3 stars in the previous couple patches get completely punished. And, you know, I feel like that should be a viable strategy. So the fact that it exists is okay. And, you know, Jarvan's like a really good unit too, just because he's doing a little bit of everything. He's like front line and also kind of helping your back line too right now. It's really, really important for that Protector or Dark Star or Shredder synergy. So he's a very, very good tier 1 unit right now to pick up.
I've always I like what you said about making 3-star units kind of a mini game almost, where it's like you're not necessarily going for it every game, but it's something where if you have an opportunity, so you pick up 6 of a unit, you're like, oh, I'm gonna hold on to this and see if I can maybe extra roll here and there to try to complete that 3-star. And then once you do, it's exciting, has a big impact on the game. But it's not like the objective every single time, because it does become run of the mill. Like I was a big Star Guardian Sorcerer player / abuser, depending on how you look at it, back, in the earlier days of set 3. And it was, if I didn't get 3-star Nico, 3-star Syndra, and at least one other 3-star, whether it was Ari or Lux in those games, I felt like it was a bad game, and that shouldn't really be how it is. I shouldn't be expecting to get that many 3-stars in my game, I feel like. But it feels like after 3.5, there's a little bit more of a balance around 3-stars in general. But I do wonder if it's going to become more of a priority now with Shredder coming back and then Syndra being so strong. What do you think? I'll ask you this, Salvyyy. What do you think a 3-star champion's place is in TFT? Like, how often should you see it? What impact should it have in the game? What do you think?
Impact obviously depends on the cost, right? Obviously, a 3-star 4 or 5 cost should probably win you the game because it's hard to get and it actually needs a lot of money and level you need to put in. Also needs to be uncontested 4 cost to be able to hit it. So I think that's like that's something that should happen. Like, I don't know, once every maybe like 15 or 20 games. Like, if basically you scout, you see you roll a lot of these units, you're the only player going for it, and you're like, maybe this wins me the game. And I can try to go for it. And then these occasional 1 or 2-star 3 costs are totally fine, right? You get a lot of these units early, you hold, you maybe see some value in taking it. And as I said, obviously there should be some comps that maybe rely on 3-starring the unit. For example, you look at the 6BME comp. I think 3 cost carries to win you the game are totally fine, and they should be in the game.
Yeah, okay. I would say that a lot of times when we're kind of weighing decisions on like how TFT should be approached, I think it should always be evaluated through the lens of risk versus reward. In times when like reroll was like too good, the risk wasn't really high because you would hit it so consistently, and therefore going for these kinds of strategies was overwhelmingly, similar every single game. And part of what makes, I think, games like TFT compelling, I'm sure Salvyyy can back this up, is that you're introduced with unique situations every game. Versus like in the reroll, when the pool was a lot smaller before set 3.5, it felt like you could easily get these 3 stars over and over and over. And it was highlighted by the fact that even in the Void Brawler compositions, you could consistently 3-star Cho'Gath and Vel'Koz. And that was like something that was really oppressive for an entire patch or two. So I think that, when we're looking at like what reroll's role is, or 3 stars in general, it's like you should be constantly introducing an opportunity to win, but that people have to make a calculated risk. And I think that's where the payoff is, both for people who compete and also people who try to beat it. Because then they have to consider, what are they going to do in response to that? Risk versus reward and also counterplay options, I think, are the 2 big things.
I think if you look at the role that galaxies have in the set as well, where if you make re-rolling and hitting those 3 stars more difficult and more of a special thing, then that also kind of elevates the trade sector galaxy too, because then you say, oh, cool, this is a galaxy where I can maybe get like more 3 stars than usual. That's awesome, right? So if we trend in that direction, that also kind of makes that galaxy in particular more fun, and I think more exciting and successful in terms of what it's trying to do. I had a reroll game. I had a trade sector game, not to brag or anything like that, but I had a trade sector game last night where I had a 3-star Nico, 3-star Syndra, and a 3-star Victor, and I had 90 HP by the end of the game. It felt amazing, and I will cherish that game forever. So thanks, Mort. Anyway, moving on to some synergies. Let's talk a little bit about the Celestial buff that came in. So this kind of goes hand in hand with the buffs to Xayah and also the buffs to Protectors as well, in that this Protector Mystic comp that's been kind of going up and down through various patches of set 3 now seems to be kind of on the rise again. Specifically, 2 questions, I guess, you guys can kind of like think about. Where will Protector Mystic fall into the meta now that it seems to be stronger? And where will Celestial in general as a trait fall in terms of splashing it into other comps or maybe unlocking new comps? Like, what are your thoughts on kind of those 2 things? And I'll just throw it out there. Whoever answers first can talk.
All right, so talking about Celestial, I feel like after they removed Kassadin, it's really, really hard to get Celestial in unless you have a Spirit. Because it's only the 2 Protector units, and then it's Ashe and Lulu. And Ashe pretty much only gets played in sniper comms. And I guess Lulu is easy to fit in because you want to run Mystic most games. But if you don't run Protectors, basically, it feels really, really hard to even get Celestial in because it's only 4 units, right?
Yeah.
And it's usually not worth taking in Ashe just to get Celestial online over something else because you don't have the space. So I would actually love maybe one more Celestial unit to get access.
Like a Kassadin.
Where would you put it? Would you put it back at the...
Actually, I think they should have kept Kassadin. Kassadin was really fun because you had to position around it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And he was doing it that enabled both Celestial and Mana Reaver, because now Mana Reaver is pretty much only regular Thresh and Celestial is hard to get. So in that sense, I feel like there's a gap after removing Kassadin.
Yeah, so in set 3.5, I felt like Celestials have like fallen a lot in power levels simply because there just seemed to be a higher power level of everything. And when things burst a lot harder, like an Echo or like an Urgot or like these things that like instantly kill or basically does unstoppable amounts of damage, that the slow grind of healing back doesn't really matter nearly as much. Yeah. Couple that with the fact that the only comp that liked to use Celestial was like a Jhin-based sniper composition, so the burst would heal Jhin. But infiltrators and all these other things like made their life miserable, so they really couldn't get anything off. I wonder if it ends up becoming better because we see a little bit of a wheel turning right now. Because Syndra and comps are so powerful, Mystics are becoming really important. People are playing like heavier frontline. Mystic Vanguards are starting to see a little bit of a comeback, I think, just because they can out-sustain or anything that 3-star stuff so they don't die from the Syndra overkill. And then maybe that instant opportunity for Celestial to come into play. So if I do think Celestial becomes relevant or like these Mystics, it's largely because it's a response to the metagame as opposed to it's really powerful individually right now.
I will say I think we're one small patch change away from Space Jam coming back too. I think I think all of the things are starting to fall in place. We're so close. I think Darius, did he get? I think he got a little bit of a buff last in 10.13. I remember right?
Yeah, he got buffed twice the last 2 patches ago. Yeah.
So we're close. We're close to Space Jam coming back. The Celestial buff helps a lot, I think, with that. So we'll see. But looking at some of the other patch notes, I'm just kind of going through all this. We're kind of jumping all over the place. One thing I guess we can kind of talk about is the Fizz nerf is an interesting one, because towards the end of 10.13 especially, and really throughout most of 3.5, Fizz has felt like a unit that you just kind of put in everything. Like, it doesn't really matter what the comp was. Fizz 2 is just always going to be good. Do you think this nerf puts Fizz in a more reasonable place?
I mean, he's still playable. He's still a really good unit, but I agree. If there's a unit that you put in or can put in any comp, no synergies whatsoever, and it makes sense and it's better than your alternatives, I feel like that's a problem. Because if you just put in a fish, no matter what comp, and you don't even care about synergies, it kind of makes the game stay, because then it feels like you skip one part of the game, which is synergies and unit composition. So in that sense, I think that the Fizz nerf is fine. He's still playable. Still a really, really good unit. You can tag him into snipers if you need backline access. So I think that the nerf is totally reasonable.
Well, it's interesting you bring up synergies as well, because I think one of the hallmarks of set 3 is that the importance of synergies has been kind of downplayed versus the importance of individual units and items on units. And so with some of these changes, do you feel like the focus of the game is going back towards synergies a little bit more than it has so far in set 3?
That's actually a good question. I actually talked to Mort about it, and I told him I really like synergies that open up the effect for the whole team. For example, like Mystic, Celestial, or yeah. I love Knights in set 1. I really, really like those synergies, because then they actually make sense to put in and buff your whole team. And actually, I felt like it makes for more interesting comps. Because if you look for some sins from set 2, I think that comp was so fun, because you had so many 2 pieces that affected the whole team, that you could take in like Desert, Cloud, Mystic and stuff, or even Ocean. That's why the comp felt so fun to me, at least, because you had so many options. So yeah, I think more power to synergies is a good move, yeah.
Okay, interesting. What are your thoughts on that, Dan?
I think that this set has hit a healthy balance of both. I think that, in set 1, the synergy tags were too strong, so they had to nerf it multiple times. In set 2, outside of a couple of really oppressive things like Shadow Patch or Ocean Mages for a while, there really wasn't like synergy that was like overwhelmingly dominant versus just having raw power of units. And that's what created the Summoner Assassin composition, which oftentimes didn't play summoners or assassins, but yet we called it that because like a Azir carry. So it was really funny. And now it was a little bit too abstract. It was harder for players to grasp. And like, I remember specifically, I studied that composition for like a month, and I still felt like I didn't really get it. And so I think that, you need to have some direction for that. And that's why I think it's important for verticals to be powerful in TFT. But at the same time, you really do want to make them individually stronger. Like, look at the Irelia change. Well, it's one of the more interesting ones, because Cybernetics didn't really need a lot of help, right? Before this patch. And yet when they tap Cybernetics, they make Irelia even stronger to make her feel like a carry, but they're buffing more for like the 1-star variant of it. What does that necessarily mean? And I think that the good players, like, I'm not sure if this change actually means too much. Like, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I haven't had time to experiment with it. But the important thing is, like, what does that give you as an option of a player? And the good players will be able to make use of that, even temporarily, versus some of the players who just ignore that and say, you know what, this comp is nerfed. It's not as good as much anymore. And I think that's like really important to have that balance of both.
It's interesting. Well, let's move on to another topic, one that probably a lot of people have been waiting for us to talk about, and that is the most famousest of all champions in set 3.5. It's got to be Urgot. And Urgot got some changes, right? We've got those on the screen right now. He got a little bit tankier in terms of armor and magic resistance. His attack range went down, but perhaps most importantly, the time it takes for him to reel people in got longer at stars 1 and 2. And his targeting changes, I suppose the thing you can kind of equate it best with, and I think it's accurate to say that it's similar to how Caitlyn would target, where he just targets the farthest person, and then if he hits someone else who's in between, then that's the person he grabs. But the thing that's been divisive is that Urgot just one-shots people, right? Is that if he reels them in, he will kill them. Do you think this kind of solves some of the complaints in the community as far as how Urgot is operating? Because it's been said, that Urgot one-shotting people, eating them, that's not going to go away. That's just what Urgot is meant to do. But how he does it, do you feel like this is a bit more reasonable to kind of play around, Frodan?
Yeah, way more. Because the big thing about Urgot is that there wasn't counterplay. It was like kind of just hope that the fight RNG in terms of like how your ASOL tracks around the field or how units are targeting things. It just felt like it wasn't in your control, even if you could try to manipulate it through positioning. And so because it felt too random and too chaotic, you might as well just leave it how it is and hope that Urgot doesn't target the right thing. At least like Guardian Angel is like somewhat meaningful counterplay now.
That's the other big change, yeah. I forgot to mention that GA actually works now against Urgot, which is good.
So I would say that like Urgot existing was totally fine. We've had one-shot kill type champions in the game in TFT. Just that, it felt so bad when it like chewed through your mech that had Guardian Angel. Not that, people do that very often, but that's like the extreme example of like how it just got too much value.
Yeah.
And it just felt really bad. Even if the data shows that it wasn't really a good unit, you just don't want to leave people with so many sour experiences when they they spend all this time amassing resources, stacking a carry, a frontliner, and they put Guardian Angel to really ensure their frontline is strong. And it just kind of gets invalidated by a 5 gold unit that just, completely shuts down that frontline. So it feels really bad when that happens.
Do you feel a bit better about Urgot now, Salvyyy?
Yeah, I played some games, I saw him, and he feels so much better. As Frodan said, you can actually position around him now, because the targeting makes sense now. Before, it was actually random. Like, I know he had a rule, but there was actually no way, at least I don't know anyone that was smart enough to figure out positioning, because fights are a bit random, right? Units run around, and then
you can't
one
predict
unit dies 1 second earlier, and now the next unit is in range, and there was just no way you could position around Urgot, and there was no item counterplay. I know there was Trapclaw, but even Trapclaw usually gets popped before Urgot ult, so there was no item. And I think that the targeting change and the GA change make it so there's at least counterplay. I think he's too weak now, but that at least allows them to buff him again, and that's totally fine. They can buff him again.
Yeah, 3 seconds seems like a long time.
It doesn't really do much, yeah.
I played around with it a little bit last night, and I was like, it's taking a long time for him to actually eat people. And I'm one of the people that actually loves Urgot's ability. I think it's hilarious to watch, and I love in a game where you have something where when you are doing it to your opponent, you're like, yeah, this is awesome, and when it's happening to you, you're like, no, this is terrible. Like invoking such different emotional responses depending on which side of the board it's on, I think is great. So I love Urgot. But that said, if you're going to have an ability like that in your game, I think it is very important to give your players ways to play around it and not feel like you feel bad for being hit by it, but you don't want to feel that you're totally at the mercy of something that is out of your control, which is how original Urgot felt. So I agree with you guys where I think this is a great change. I think Urgot is much more palatable to play against. He's still fun to play as, although again, maybe 3 seconds is a bit too long, kind of lower that a little bit. He's a bit tankier, so I suppose he's got that. But overall, I think he's in a much better place, and I'm glad that the ult didn't change because I think it's hilarious and I love watching it, and it's great. So there you go. There's my treatise on Urgot. So if you lower the time though, let's patch Urgot ourselves here real quick though. If you lower the time, what would you lower it to, Salvyyy? For this 1 star reel in.
I mean, probably set at 2 seconds. What it's at 2 star right now. And for 3 star, make it like 0.1. Just make him read the whole team, right? If you're 3 star Urgot, he should just read the whole team. Like,
I totally agree. Yeah.
Do like 9 chains and pull everything in.
Maybe the 3 star 5, because you should win the game, right?
Yeah.
3 star Urgot actually doesn't do anything right now. It's probably not even worth the money. So yeah, I would definitely probably do like 2.1, 0.1 or something like that to make it better. But yeah, obviously gotta wait and see, but I'm pretty sure he's too weak right now after those changes.
So I'm just curious because like getting a 3 star 5 cost unit is super rare. I've done it once ever. I got a Lulu and it was amazing. I won the game, and I agree. I think if you get a 3 star 5 cost, you should just win the game. Whatever ability they have should just be game ending because it's so rare. Dan, have you ever gotten a 3-cost or a 5-cost?
I've tried so many times. There's been lots of games where I get like 8 game planks or something, but it just wasn't. I think the most fun 3-star 5-cost unit is Thresh, because you just get to do like ridiculous things because you just basically pull your entire bench. But yeah, I like those kinds of things. They should be rare. There's this thing in auto chess where it was like a 1 in a million, like literally 1 in a million statistically chance to get like a ridiculous version of a unit called Chaos Knight, and it would just like there's just no chance to really predict it'll ever happen. But once in a while, it's like this 1 in a million chance that it appears in your shop, and it's worth like a 6-star unit. It's like ridiculously strong. It kills everything. And the reason why that people liked that was because it was so rare that it felt like being part of that game was special, even if you wanted to lose again.
Yeah,
and I think that the 3-star legendaries can also contribute towards that. It should be like an entire spectacle that people don't expect, and almost to a certain extent, people like respect the winner for being able to get them.
I've been on like the receiving end of that too, where it's like a game where I've seen someone else get it, and the whole lobby is just talking about how awesome it is. Nobody's like upset about it, so it's cool to see it happen every once. Like Salvyyy, you've played a lot more games than Dan and I probably combined. How many times has it happened to you? How many times have you gotten the 3-star legendary?
I actually can't remember any in set 1. I don't think I got one in set 1. And set 2, I think I had Cinch twice.
Okay.
And Z once. And then this set I hit ASL 3 on PBE actually, when I was tested in this set at the start, yeah. So not that often, but yeah. Since I'm playing competitive games, it's usually pretty hard to get that much gold, right?
Yeah, you're not going to get a lot of opportunities in high-end competitive games for sure. But all right, well, I think it's time to move on to our final section of the show. We're going to check out a tier list that I'm told Salvyyy has prepared, and then we're also going to do some questions from the world outside of this podcast. So
that's right. So this is the first time DoA has been part of the show, so I'll just go ahead and do this again for people who don't know. So we really like to get first day patch impressions from some of the top players. So Salvyyy, if you were to make a day 0, what you think are the strongest comps for people to at least like start thinking about, we'd like to do a synergies tier list. And it's completely open. You can choose to structure it however you want. S tier can be something completely different than how Kuram and Soju and all of them did it. So we usually go alphabetically. So patch all the way to Vanguard.
All right, Vanguards. Since there's so much magic damage right now, I think Vanguard's actually pretty bad. So probably C tier.
Okay.
All right.
Asol is probably still A tier. He got nerfed, but he was super broken before, so he's still really playable. Stargun is the trade itself is actually not that great. It's probably just B tier. It's just mainly Syndra. So if Syndra gets nerfed, we might not even see any Stargun in anymore.
Yeah.
Space Pirates is probably in a really bad spot. It's probably E tier, D tier. Like the worst.
E tier. We have to create.
It might even be E tier because you only run 2 Space Pirates early game if you got nothing else, pretty much. So it might actually be.
It does give you a lot of gold early. So when you put all the way down in D.
The gold normalization in a lot of the patch changes makes Space Pirate like a lot worse. Part of the reason why Space Pirate was so good was because of the gold range that happened in the past. But now, like, it feels like you get gold consistently. So Space Pirate's not as.
Because for Space Pirates, it's actually unplayable because GP is way too bad right now. And you only run 2 Space Pirates, probably stage 2 if you got nothing else, and you have to open up for it. So it's actually really bad. Yeah.
Jeez, okay. Continue. Right. Sorry about the interrupting.
Continue.
Sogs in general is pretty flexible. It's probably A tier. You can 2, 4, and 6 Sogs. Everything is fine mid-game, late game. So it's probably one of the best trades. Sniper is really, really good now after Jhin. It might even be S tier, I'm not sure, but since Jhin is so strong right now, it might be S tier. Rabbits is still fine. Jinx is actually playable, especially since it's less contested. It's probably still A tier. Also one of the strongest openers still, Malphite 262 and Rabbits.
Yes.
Definitely.
I think Protector might actually be S tier just because of J4, because that unit is so strong throughout the whole game. The protectors are really strong. You can run them with infills, snipers, even Sorgs. So I think they're in a really good spot. Wait, what is the next one? I can't even read it.
That's Paragon. Paragon.
I think Janna's only playable in one comp pretty much, and you can tag it into counter Vanguards, but since there's no Vanguards, it's probably just the trade itself. It's probably just C tier, if not even worse. It's actually pretty bad. Mystic right now is really strong. 2 Mystic is strong. Probably S tier because there's so many Sorks. Yeah, probably S tier. Like most comps, you actually just run. Also, Karma's really strong, so you get easy access. You just run Karma and Soraka or Lulu.
Seems right.
Mercenary is GP only. As I said, GP is almost unplayable. He might actually be D tier as well. Because I've actually seen GA, GP2 that had one more defensive item, QSS. It didn't even cast. I don't know.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it just got Mega Reaver and died. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Every time I see a GP, I feel like that's a hero because I remember the good old GP days where just hit a GP, you kill the whole board, right? But I don't know. GP fits really bad right now.
Even on Dwarf Planet, where like everything's so condensed, do you think that's?
Oh, I only played that once. That one might even be the worst galaxy because that one is so unbalanced for the units because the units are designed for a bigger board. If it's really bad, half of the units are just super broken and half of them are unplayable. Like you can't really
on that map last night. Actually, I think Dan was watching the game that I was playing. He did okay.
I don't know. I only played one game. It actually felt horrible. It felt really bad. I probably prefer Galactic Armory over that one, to be honest. And that one is
we should do a Galaxies too.
Oh yeah, that one would be fun. That one would be fun as well.
All right, we'll do it next show. Next
time.
All right, another conversation. How about Mech Pilot?
Mech Pilot is probably S tier. If you're in Mech Stage 3, it's probably. I make it A tier. Maybe it's even worse because the problem is Jin is running around, right? And Jin actually kills a mech instantly if you don't run dodge mech. So you need like QSS and Trapclaw. So you need a lot of dodge because even if you have Bramble Vest, it just dies to Jin. So since Jin is so much around, it might even be worse. It's probably meta call. And if you see like 3 Jin players per lobby, you probably don't want to be playing mech because that matchup is so bad. Mana Reaver the trade itself is really strong, but obviously hard to get since it's only Irelia and Thresh. Probably just B tier. Infiltrators are really good right now because you have really good early game access. Nocturne Z is one of the best openers in the game. It's probably A tier. Yeah, Demo is, I don't know, Demo is mainly for early game now since you don't run GP, but Rumble Ziggs open is one of the best as well. Probably C tier since GP doesn't exist. And then I saw a lot of Dark Stars today. Dark Star seems really strong. You can run 4, 2, or 6. Pretty flexible, even which units you run, which carries you run, depending. You can carry Jin, Zerath, or Shaco, depending what items you drop. So it's probably S tier. And then Cyber's probably fallen off. I've seen some people try to make Irelia work. I don't really see Cyber opener anymore, even because the damage and the HP got nerfed. It's probably only B tier now.
Really? Okay. Wow. I thought you'd at least.
I don't know. It might be different in a few days, but I have not seen any Cyber player dominate my lobby so far. I played like 10 games. Never seen any good Cyber openers at the moment. So.
All right.
Just gonna do it safe on B. Could be up, could be down. I don't know. Chrono. Chrono's actually an interesting one because you never run 4, 6 Chrono, but 2 Chrono is so good, especially early game.
Yeah.
Like 2 Chrono would probably be S tier and like 4 and 6 Chrono is probably C tier. So I don't know, probably put it A in between.
What's the difference, I guess?
Yeah, but you usually only run 2 because it's only the first 2 procs or the first proc that matters since fights are really fast right now. Is that Celestial? Yeah, that's Celestial, right? It's probably B tier. As I said, really hard to tech in. In the comps you can run it, it's good though. For like your Jin carry and stuff. Brawlers are still fine. They definitely fell off. The Brawler side is still fine. Probably also B tier. Which one is that? I'm actually blind. Blaster? Oh, Blaster. Blaster is actually almost one of the worst trades. You only run 2 Blaster, and it's only for Jinx, and even then it's only there to get resets, not even for the damage.
Yeah.
So it's actually probably C tier. Yeah, it's probably C tier.
Kog'Maw's not that great, so.
Yeah. Blamers are probably the same. It's probably also C tier. Might be up there because if we see Shredder come back, it's better. But the trade itself it's not great. It's not like you take in 3 Blade Master mid game and you feel fine about it. It's only for like 1 comp maybe.
Okay.
Battlecast probably B tier. I've not seen much 6 Battlecast, but it's really good early mid game where you run Nocturne Kog'Maw and Ilaoi. So it's probably safe in B tier. Also, Astro is probably also B tier. Needs a lot of setup, but if you get like perfect Teemo items and you hit Teemo 2 and stuff, it can actually be decent. So probably B tier.
Cool.
I think
with this, now that you've finished, is there any like movements? Like, okay, now that I see this, does anything look wrong based off what you did in the first half?
Nah, Travers, this looks actually fine. I think this looks actually okay. Because like Stargate is a good comp, but if I just look at the trade is not good, right? It's, as we talked about, just get 6 Stargate for free and you might not even run it if you run Syndra. So
yeah, I can see that.
So from the looks of it, it's mainly Sniper, Darkstar, and Stargate and some Jinx. And I think those trades represent that pretty well. That's
like a big statement to put Darkstar all the way up at S early on. I mean, it did. But yeah.
I've seen a lot of Darkstar, so I'm pretty sure it's making a comeback this patch. I'm just going to call it.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
I think so too. Because of its flexibility. It's so insane. Like, you don't have to have Xerath and Jhin be the carry. Shaco carry sometimes is good enough to guarantee like a top 4.
Well, the 3.5 changes too, where like everyone that dies contributes to it, makes it a lot better. So yeah, now with the actual buffs to the numbers, I think it should be strong too. But S tier, that's shocking. But that's cool. All right. Thanks for building that tier list for us, Salvyyy. A short preview.
That's right. 2 things. One, I like that he approaches from a synergies. He just doesn't let like the champion itself kind of drive the discussion. So like Sorcerers, for example, and Sargon, but Syndra being really good. He's like trying to isolate them and explain what he thinks about when he talks about putting in a synergy on the board. The second thing is that there's another tier list we want him to do, which is always fun. One of the more controversial but very fun.
All right,
like get to do is ask who are your top 10 players in your local region. So Salvyyy, you're the first player to come on the show that represents EU, and so we ask you, what is your tier list of top 10 players in EU? And it could be in any order, and it could be exactly how you want to describe it. You can explain it any way you want.
He's looking away. He's trying to ignore you.
Yeah. No. I actually put up letter because I need to look at player names, right? So I actually have letter open, so because then it's actually a lot, and I think like the top 5 maybe is easy to do, but then it gets really hard because then you have to look at like how did they do set 1 and set 2? Because I like to look at all sets and see how they did. I don't like looking at letter right now, taking 10 top 10, and those are the best. So because I'm pretty sure like the best European player is Dark Hydra, because he was on top of the ladder for set 1, set 2, set 3, pretty much all the time. 2 accounts, top 10, rank 1 for longest time, dominated set 1. So I think that's probably the safest card. Put him up there. And then rank 2.
No bias there, I'm sure.
No, actually not. I think you could probably ask most people and they would agree. But yeah.
Okay.
It's my boy Hydra for sure.
Great.
And then second guy is probably Dasik. He started later, like me as well. I think he's also started midway set 1. He actually ended top 10 as well, and then he completely dominated set 2. Probably no one can argue that anyone was better set 2. He held rank 1 for, I don't know, probably 80% of the set, ended rank 1. So, and then this set, I don't want to say he fell off. He's obviously still insane player, but not as dominant as he was in set 2. So yeah, those are probably clear top 2s, and after that it actually gets pretty tricky, and I actually don't want to call anyone off, but it might actually be Volterius. He is 2 accounts top 10 right now as well, or was. He was pretty good set 2. I think he just stopped end of set 2. I don't know. I can't remember him from set 1. I guess I can look it up. It's Volterius. Wait, I can type it in. Volterius.
X.
Yeah, it's an X at the end. Yeah. Like this. I can type it in Discord.
No. We'll just show you.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't even remember him from set 1, but as I said, I don't even play it much, so not even sure. But yeah, he was really good set 2. He's insane this set.
Yes.
Who else?
You can, by the way, put yourself on this list, Salvyyy, anytime.
Nah, I'm gonna skip it. I don't like doing that. Someone else, you can invite someone else from you, and he can put me on that list. That's pretty.
Oh wow!
You're beyond lists at this point.
Who else? As I said, now it gets really tricky. Like I could name 6 players, but like putting them in order is probably hard. So the order now is probably messed up.
Chat, some of the players in chat saying they don't want to let you get off the hook. You have to put yourself on this list somewhere.
Hey, well, I mean, put me number 1 then.
Kind of the rules, you know.
Number 1. All right,
number 1.
All right, that's what.
If I have to be, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I mean, easy. There you go.
Where else would you jump? Yeah.
So I think I actually really like Higa as a player. Sometimes he trolls a bit, but I think he's really, really great. Was great set 2. He's always up there, unless he dual queues with CDD and he just gives the LP in the night queues.
Sure.
Probably same as Ming. There's always this Ming versus Higa statement. I guess I put Higa over Ming now, so Ming's gonna be mad.
It's a nice little rivalry there.
That's okay.
I would actually put Tabs on there as well. Yeah, he was insane set 1. Like Tabs set 1 was insane. I remember he always had 2 accounts top 5 and stuff. And I think he just got a bit. He just took a step back. Set 2, set 3. He's still obviously insane. Always top of the ladder and stuff. So that's 7.
3 more to go.
So it seems like you put a heavy emphasis on all 3 sets, or at least like the beginning.
Yeah, I don't know. As I said, I think TFT is a game where you have to adapt every patch, and I really look at players that do well almost every patch. I don't like looking at a patch and thinking they're the best player now just because they like have moment rank 1. I don't know. That's not what I think is best.
Sure.
There's a couple of names.
I definitely did Raiko on there. I almost missed Raiko. Yeah, Raiko is also insane. I can't remember him from set 1, but set 2 at the end he was really good. He's super consistent this set. It's YKO. No, and R up front.
Raiko, RYKO.
Yeah.
What about I'm not sure how to pronounce the name, but Luca, LUQUE.
Yeah, he might
top ladder bit.
Yeah, he's going really hard this half of the set. He was good set 2 as well at the end, if I remember correctly. Yeah, he actually ended rank 6.
Okay.
He should probably be up there, and he was top 50 first set. I don't know, that's like a hardcore.
LUQUE.
Yeah.
Put him on. And then last one is actually tough. I think Fluffy is also always around. I don't know. I can't remember people from set that really makes it hard, but it's probably Fluffy because he was really strong set 2 as well. He's insane this set.
I can't believe you did Gunmade dirty like that.
There's a lot of other players you could include.
I mean, as I said, like I think the top 3, me, Hydra, and Daisy, that's like easy for me at least. But after that, it gets really hard. I would actually be probably better at doing an NA tier list than you. But I think
do you want to do an NA tier list right now? I'm okay with a little pivot here and see Salvyy's NA tier list.
I'm not opposed.
Okay, all right. For the first time, we get to see some cross-region ranking.
Sure,
right, wipe it, Jules. Top 10 players NA.
Save NA players in chat. Soldier top 10, please. Oh wait, I have to do Soldier my EU tier list for sure. Oh no, he's in chat. Oh no.
Ignore chat. Believe in yourself.
So rank 1 is actually for sure Milk. I always looked up to Milk, especially set 1, set 2. I think he also lost a bit of his mojo once he realized competitive is not like what he wanted it to be. But I think it's the delicious milk.
Delicious milk. But he said he's kind of washed right now.
Nah, he's still ranked 1.
Still without saying it, you know.
He's just wasting too much time on Tarkov, probably. He's probably Tarkov, from what I've known.
Does not help with TFT skills.
Nah. And then second one, I don't know. It's probably Socks. It's probably actually Socks. Got rank 1, 2, set 2, and 3. I can't remember set 1. Let's check.
I like this idea from chat. Like, where would you put yourself on the NA rank? You're an NA player.
Put me behind Milk. Put me behind Milk if I'm on.
Wow.
Okay, number 2.
What a respect
Okay,
to,
go number 1 again.
Yeah, I would say Milk. I think Milk is the best player in the world.
All right.
Yeah, put me behind Milk then.
Sure.
I think Sock said he was like learning a lot set 1. He wasn't really playing a lot of it, and then said 2 he like really grinded and got 1.
It was early days, right? It was early days. So.
Hmm.
And then it's probably Grandwise actually, because Grandwise took rank 1 and 2, always up there grinding.
GBA.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And I don't know. Then it's Soldier and Kurum probably on 4 and 5. I don't know.
Probably.
Better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
They're always up there. So now it gets harder as well. Probably Aegon. Aegon is also really good. And then I like Yun as well. And then list is almost full, right? 2, 4, 6.
You need 2 more.
2 more. Probably Keen. Keen is always
Keen.
insane.
Okay.
All right.
And then we got 1.
What about Polt? Good old Polt.
Yeah. Since I look for all sets, I don't know where to put Polt.
Yeah,
If I look at set 3, he would definitely up there. But since I look at all sets,
Fair enough.
it's probably Solus. Solus is too for fun, but I think Solus is actually a great player. if Solus tried, I don't know.
I'm crashing because he's in chat.
Wow.
Is he actually? Is he actually in chat? I don't know. I feel like Solus tried for like the first 2 weeks of TFT, got rank 1, and then now he's just for fun streamer, blasting YouTube videos. But I think if Solus actually tried, he would actually be really good.
You're not criticizing him. You're just disappointed that he's not living up to the potential.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Solus should look
like
at
election lobbying.
Yeah, you should look at this list and grind hard now. Yeah, it's very just some.
It took a long time for you to think. There's some gaps here, right? You're like some clear names, and then you're like, I'm not sure. Then gaps.
Yeah.
All right. That was really fun, Salvyyy. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then hand it back to DoA if you want to do the mailbag segment.
Sure. Well, that's again, this is my first time, so we've got a mailbag as well, which is apparently where we take questions from the rabble and see what they have to say. So here's one from Ginger. All-time 5 best players. So this is our 3rd tier list, I guess now, where we're just taking the top 5 from anywhere.
I don't know about Korea and China, so no clue about those. I'm just going to do NAU. I guess it's me, Hydra, Dasik, and then I guess it's Sox and Milk, just top half of both lists.
Okay.
I could also take 5U, I guess, but since there's 2 good NA players, I'm just going to put them on.
Okay.
Wow. Thanks.
2 good NA players. Good.
All right. Are there any more? Do we have any? We've got to have another one, right?
That's the only question? That was the only question.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, it's
okay. That's the only one. All right. Well, thanks, Ginger. You submitted the only good question, and shame on the rest of you out there in internet land. All right.
Questions. Yeah, maybe there's some questions in chat. But also just gonna be troll
chat questions.
Yeah.
Oh, that's dangerous.
Right,
if we didn't get good ones.
30 seconds for chat questions.
All right. You're on the counter, chat. You're on the timer. What do you got?
That's right.
30 questions.
Was there anybody that you wanted to honorable mention that you couldn't put in the top 10 for either list? Like maybe a player that's like in a set or 2 might make that top 10, but right now they don't have enough history.
Prosy Diddy. The guy is grinding and just FFing games after cracks. If that guy would try hard, he would definitely be on top 10 EU, but he just loves the games. If he doesn't like the game, he just FFs and goes next.
All right.
Yeah. Probably
especially mental.
Yeah.
Question from
Nympha Hugo asks, what's the worst and best galaxy?
So best galaxy now is probably Trade Sector, because it just reduces variance, gives you double the decisions each turn. And after playing 1 game, the worst one might actually be the smaller board one. If it's not that one, it's probably Galactic Armory.
All right. Esports Law asks, do you think this is a really interesting question? And he's a friend of mine, so there's some nepotism involved in me picking this, but I think it's a good question too. He says, do you think there's a difference between the best players and the best tournament players?
For sure. Like there's different skill sets you need for tournament, right? Like stronger mental. You need to prepare for opponents and compared to ladder play. So yeah, there's probably players that do better in tournament, like we talked about earlier. They're just more fit for tournaments. So yeah, I would definitely say there's a difference. Yeah.
What makes a good tournament player?
You're more of a. Do you think you're better at tournaments or ladder, or you're balanced at both?
I mean, probably ladder. I don't have the best tournament record, to be honest. So yeah, I would probably say I'm a better ladder player than tournament player. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. All right, fair enough.
Cool.
Sunstronaut asked, "What do you think about the Korean playstyle?" Added commentary about how Bebe or BB, I don't know how you pronounce his name, used to climb to #1 in NA.
It's definitely interesting. It's just so aggressive. It reminds me a bit of the old Set 1 days where damage numbers were so high that you were forced to run on level 6 for a lot of games. So yeah, it definitely works. Like, he got rank 1 in A. It can be a bad playstyle in that sense, right? So it's actually going to be exciting to see worlds where like all the playstyles crash, to see what's really the best. So I think it's really interesting, and I watched some of it as well to try to adapt.
All right. Well, I think that's all we'll take from Twitch chat. That's enough of that.
Sure.
There was a lot of questions about K-pop in there. Do you watch much K-pop?
I actually got like 2 songs from Milk, so I guess there were like 2 good songs.
All right.
Okay.
Is it
what else?
listens to? Yeah.
Never mind. All right, I think so. So correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but this seems like the time to end the show. Is that right?
Yes, we are over time, but
We're gonna do that,
especially for this last few segments. He was
it was fun.
True.
All right, sounds good. Well, we'll end it there. Teamfight Talk Show. Thanks to we'll let Salvyyy kind of say his goodbyes at the end of this. Any shout outs you want to make? Any final thoughts before we close this out?
Sorry if I pissed anyone off on the
I don't think he was very tame. I don't think you need to worry about that.
It was very
also Soju's still in here. Maybe special shout out to Soju. You can add me on my friend list when you're 1K LP. So yeah.
Oh,
I don't know.
All right, he's triple eighth today. He got 888.
Yeah, he got 888.
Ooh,
888.
That's a rough start.
Arena, man. That is rough.
I wonder if he's even here to defend himself, because I think he's on the Twitch rival stream picking his team.
I don't see him anymore. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. All right. Well, Dan, any closing thoughts?
Oh, definitely tune in for the Cloud9 tournament tonight. It's going to be really fun. I'll be casting with DoA, and we'll get to see Sox and a few other. I think Ine's playing tonight's lobby, and a few other people. And I mean, it could be the beginning of the world champion being crowned, because
could be.
NA.
There you go. Yeah, NA in Riot Games, NA has also always had a great record at World Championships. So yeah,
that's right. That's
pretty good. All right. Well, that was a Teamfight Talk Show, guys. Had to get that one in there. It's my first day. Thanks for watching, everyone. Big shout out to Jukes.gg for sponsoring the show and many things here on Giant Slayer. Go check that out to find a lot of different esports. They're a great site and a great proponent of esports right now. But that'll do it. Thanks for watching Giant Slayer's Teamfight Talk Show episode 9 with myself, DoA, Frodan, and Salvyyy. Frodan and I will see you next time with another awesome player to discuss more awesome things. So we'll see you then.